Bond.
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 James Bond.
There are few fictional characters as beloved or recognized as James Bond 007. From the moment audiences were introduced to Bond in his 1962 film debut Dr. No, the film industry was never the same. By his third film, Goldfinger, James Bond was a household name. Audiences were enamored with 007, from the sexy cars, to the creative gadgets, to the pussy galore, and to the iconic theme song. And by the time Thunderball came out in 1965, the Bond films had grossed over $3 billion worldwide, adjusted for inflation. The series would continue to evolve and thrive for the next 5 decades and beyond, featuring 6 actors in the eminent role. Sure, there were times they hit cringeworthy lows, almost degenerating to self-parody of invisible cars, cities in outer space, and Halle Berry, but it's the series' often bold experimentation and renewal that would help keep Bond alive and relevant throughout the years. And like all successful experiments, the first attempt was an outright failure, so much so that it was lost and forgotten for nearly 30 years. In 1954, 1 year after Ian Fleming introduced James Bond to the world in his hit novel, Casino Royale, he was persuaded by CBS to sell the rights to the story for a single episode of the American television series Climax. Bond's initial transition from book to film was anything but smooth. To make the character more palpable for American audiences, the Climax producers took many liberties with the adaptation. No longer would Bond be the suave, martini-drinking British spy that everyone would come to admire. No, instead Climax's Casino Royale would feature Jimmy Bond, a scotch-drinking American intelligence agent who's more stirred than shaken when compared to Fleming's original. Yet, beyond that, does this early 007 adventure stand on its own 2 legs as something of its own merit, removed from the success of the cinematic series? Moreover, is it required viewing? Or more appropriately in this case, is it required bonding?
I'll tell you what, man, the expectation that's sent in my head from hearing the name James Bond for my, basically my entire life does not prepare me for what this character is. Let me be honest. Jimmy Bond, I'm going to call him Jimmy Bond, whatever. Jimmy Bond is not a bad character, except for the fact that he's an American Bond and it sucks. Okay? I like the character and what they're trying to do with him. There are some scenes that I think work particularly well. I'm not going to sit here and tell you, that everything in this production is gold, but he's a good character. It just felt weird, but a lot of it you still felt cues being taken from that spy sort of movie, and it didn't feel like it was taking itself too seriously, which actually endeared it when it fell short, in my opinion.
I want to go ahead and put this out there on the record. This is my first real Bond experience. It's like I know that Connery was a Bond, I know Bronson was a Bond, I know Craig is a Bond. We've talked about that, and I said this to Kyle. I don't know if this is necessarily the one that you wanted to introduce me to. It's like, hey, here's your driver's license, kid, go get in an accident. That's ultimately, what happened. I mean, it's just like, what I know about Bond is one-liners. What do you have in the martini, shaken and not stirring? But when I see this American Bond, I feel like when the bartender says, "What do you have?" and he's like, "I want a Keystone Light." Like, I just don't. I was looking for everything that I had heard about in Bond, and it wasn't there. So I want to get into it a little bit more, man.
So what happened right there when you said that, TJ, is, sir, may I help you? Who are you? I'm Keith Stone. Wait, I'm Jimmy Bond. And
This is the version of a James Bond that I can see William Shatner playing, and playing very well.
Yeah, he would have killed it.
Jimmy Bond. Yeah, that works. You're right.
He seemed like a cross between a baseball player and the typical American agent type that you would see in 1950s gangster films. This is a guy who ordered scotch. I mean, the only thing that he really did have in common with the later more familiar portrayal of James Bond, he had a few witticisms.
Aren't you the fella who was shot? No, I'm the fella who was missed.
He had a little bit of that charm. In fact, the one character in this that comes closest to being James Bond is the flip. They made Felix Leiter, they changed his name to Clarence Leiter. They made him the British MI6 agent, and goddamn, Michael Pate, or Pate, I don't know how to pronounce his name, who played him, is a spitting image of the way Ian Fleming described James Bond in the books. Clarence Leiter was actually one of the few shining performances in this special, and it's just a shame. The biggest thing that he does is lose the Bond girl that he's supposed to protect and threaten people with an assisted mobility device. That's the only thing that he does.
You had one job.
One.
This isn't the ideal film to introduce to somebody that's looking to begin their adventures in the Bond series. It is a curio for Bond fans, and it's especially interesting to see the evolution of how this character is portrayed on screen, especially with a film that just starts off portraying him in such a vastly different way. The special does have some shortcomings that we'll talk about a little bit later, but I think its biggest shining moment is the casting of Peter Lorre as Le Chiffre. That same year, 1954, he co-starred in one of my favorite films as a kid, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. He was a lot better in that film, but nevertheless, I thought that he was a very effective villain despite some of his terrible, terrible lines.
I liked him as a villain, man. I mean, he was a gangster for what was gangster back then. Maybe it's just me, but to hear them have a conversation back and forth, he's like, wait, tomorrow. Like, I mean, just the interaction back and forth, and everybody's like afraid of him, but he doesn't make a threat. Like, until like the end, it's like, they're like, no, this dude will kill you, right? And he just walks out, and then the phone rings, and he's like, bro, just to let you know, if you win this game, bad things are coming to you, girl. It's obviously for Lashik. Is it Lashik or LaFreak? Either way, this man has got pull. Like, I like that kind of power. That's a Tony Soprano type of move right there, to just leave the room and have somebody call on your behalf. I bow down to his gangster.
I don't think anybody other than Peter Lorre can sell a line such as, no one is gonna stand in my way. No one. Successfully.
Tomorrow night I have to win. I have to have 80 million francs, and no one is going to stand in my way. You hear? No one.
This is the kind of dialogue that we're dealing with here. Come on.
I'm with you, man. The levels of smooth on Le Chiffre make it work. And I'll tell you, something I think that was done well with subtlety, probably because of the limitations of the production, was the actual game of Baccarat. First of all, the Ian Fleming vision that you described in Mr. Pate there does a good job, does a better job than anyone else ever has of explaining Baccarat. Whoever wrote that scene to explain Baccarat while also moving the plot did an excellent job in that particular set of pages, in my opinion, okay? And then when you actually get to the game between Baseball Bond and Le Chiffre, all I can tell you is that's how you're supposed to do a card scene. It's not supposed to be exciting, but the intensity is supposed to be there. Folks, let's be clear. Actors are supposed to make their cash on scenes like that. Oh, I got a witty line here, I'm going to knock it down. No, I was the one who they missed. Great. Anybody can look awesome doing that, okay? I can look great doing Ezekiel 25:17 like a badass. I've done it before. Hell, I've done it while doing the voice of the old guy from Family Guy and gotten a ton of laughs. But if I'm just sitting there handling cards like my dude Baseball Bond and Le Chiffre were doing, that's how actors get their bonuses. I don't care if you even use this spiel in the episode. If you don't, save it, put it in an outtake. It's something to live by.
No, and you're citing the two strongest scenes in this film. Whenever it's Bond and Leiter or Bond and Le Chiffre, it works. Where it falls flat is whenever it's Bond and the substitute for Vesper Lynd from the novel, Valerie Mathis. They use the name of another character that was excised, who's in the Daniel Craig film. The interesting thing about her character in the novel and even in the spoof film was that she is later revealed to be a double agent. This film kind of lets you know right off the bat, which completely deflates a lot of the mystery, and by the end of it, she's a damsel in distress. She's tied up in a bathroom, and I've never seen somebody who just has her hands tied behind her back, struggle to walk across a room.
That's a great point by you. But to your point, rather than be a mystery, she became a device.
Exactly.
That's the way to put it.
Exactly.
I get why she was there. I mean, I get it. You know, I don't want to. I mean, no disrespect to anybody. I don't want to sit and look at a whole bunch of dudes playing cards on the screen. You got to have some estrogen in there to soften out the edges.
You need your Queen of Hearts in the deck.
Absolutely. Off with their head. So
Nice.
the chemistry seemed forced. It didn't seem natural. And when I'm watching a film for the experience, I want it to seem natural. I want the actors to do their job. And it just seemed like she was trying to force something with him. And it didn't seem like they really cared too much for each other. And I get it. And look, the whole thing about them telling that she was a double agent, I get why they did it, because it's like, okay, we know she's a double agent. Why do you care about her? You know, why do you care about this girl? Because she is clearly, you know, working for the other side, and yet he still would make his decisions with her in mind, because he clearly could have took the check and left, like, quickly. But, you know, he stuck around and we know what it is. So, yeah, it wasn't a great landing, but I get it.
Was there anything that particularly surprised you beyond the fact that it's an American James Bond? Was there anything that surprised you about this production? And I'll start by saying that the first time that I saw this many years ago, I was kind of shocked at how brutal it was for 1950s television. The torture scene at the end where they're breaking his toes one by one. I mean, there are Bond films that aren't that brutal. Was there anything that surprised you about this film?
The fact that he was American, because again, I haven't been introduced to anything else. I had no expectations, you know, for the film as far as what I was expecting from the film, except, okay, James Bond is an American. So whenever I saw him sounding like old shucks buddy from Idaho, it caught me off guard. But other than that, I mean, like I said, because I had nothing else to compare it to, you know, I was a virgin on this one. It was taken from me.
What surprised me is how you had some of that Bond cheese / intrigue injected, and it still kind of worked. Somehow this live performance, and I say that with the context again, baseball Bond being in there threw things off wildly. And just like as this is basically just like an after dinner movie that they threw on. It's not so it's like in on a scale between, you know, Lifetime movie and, you know, major cinematic release, like, you know, let's say Bohemian Rhapsody or Black Panther. It kind of falls in the middle, and it's and really the fact that it landed like that for what it was amazing. I mean, it's basically an after-school special for adults, you know, with entertaining content, minus having a lesson to teach. But like, and it still was very strong considering that. I did not intend to enjoy this as much as I did, and that was really what shocked me, is the fact that it hit the mark. There are so many things that were done fundamentally well that they were forced to do again because of the limitations of the production budget, the fact that it's live, on and on and on.
The most Bondian, the most 007 thing about this film is that it was part of a television show called Climax, which makes a lot of sense. Bond films, for the most part, a lot of them are made or broken on the strength of the villain, and Peter Lorre kind of salvages the film from being something that can easily be forgotten, and it was forgotten for over 30 years before it was discovered in the 80s. When James Bond says, "I'm the fellow that was missed," he was goddamn true. He's a prophet, because it went missing for 3 decades. At the same time, the main character, Bond, he's not very interesting. And at the end of the day, this kind of lifeless portrayal tends to bestow a kind of a lifeless film. With all that being said, do you guys think that Casino Royale 1954 is required viewing?
No, it's not. But I'm saying, if you're a Bond fan, I would recommend you see it, just so that you can know how far you've come, girl.
Listen, folks, as required viewing goes, this was a fun experience. Damn it. This was a fun experience, but I gotta be clear, guys. There's no way in hell this is required viewing. It's fun. It's quirky. If you're a file, you're gonna check it. But at day's end, this is something that you might bring up for a fun day in a cinematography class, or a film appreciation class. And again,
or television.
Thank you. And I appreciate the experience I had. God damn. I appreciate that I had a good time with it, but yeah, this isn't required. No way.
Okay, so the question that I'm really posed with is, no, it's not required viewing. You can even make the argument that it's not really a movie because it's really it's part of a television show. It's a television episode. It kind of goes to show you how few commercials they had back in the day, since this damn thing is 51 minutes. Anyway. So the real question is it required viewing if you're a James Bond fan? And even then, I would say it depends on what kind of Bond fan that you are. If you're interested in the history and the development of the character and how it translates into film, if you're looking for that foundation in the foundation argument, I can see it being highly recommended. Yeah, there we go. I don't think it's required viewing in the least, but even if you're a Bond fan, I'd recommend it just for a curio piece. It's 51 minutes. You're not going to lose much. And if anything, it's an interesting take on the character. I think that at the end of the day, Casino Royale 1954, if you're a Bond fan, it's a good curio piece. I wouldn't say it's required, but I think it'd be interesting to check out.
No, that's a great point. If nothing else, to see how the Bond character endures in all his forms, whether it's baseball Bond, whether it's any of the actors, and even still, like where you would expect a James Bond type character to be received with backlash in this day and age, instead of backlash, we're calling for inclusion upon this character, as now audiences clamor for Idris Elba to be Bond, or even the even more crazy concept of a female Bond is even being talked about.
So, what do you guys think? Have you actually seen 1954's Casino Royale? If you have, let us know in the comments below. If you had no idea that this even existed, check it out. There's no loss. But let us know what you think. And what do you think about the idea of an American James Bond? Is that something that should exist? Is that something that could possibly exist? Are you okay with an American actor playing Bond? Hell, we've had a lot of English stars come over here and put on American accents to play American characters. Isn't it about time that we have an American put on a bad... I want Dick Van Dyke to play James Bond. Anyway, let us know in the comments below. And Kyle, thanks for joining us as always. Where can we find you?
So, yeah. You're just like a couple beats away from going Team America World Police. America! Uh-oh. Yeah! I'm just saying.
It's because of Dick Van Dyke. I know, it has that effect.
Of course. Man, you can find me right here saying silly stuff on Hilarity by default. Required reading. That's where you can find me. Find my writings on Blue HQ Media Sports Media Pass. And that should round me out at this point. Demos. Awesome episode. What can I say?
Accept you welcome. And speaking of that, TJ, as always, thank you for joining us. You're always welcome here, and I'm glad that we're able to share this first true James Bond experience with you. You're probably one of the only people alive today that started their Bond experience with this film.
You know what to do, man. Holla at your boy.
And join us here every week where life is hilarious by default.